consensus. They agree with what they've used in the scientific consensus, that it was not man-made or genetically modified. And then they say, but we will continue to take in new information, which is admirable and frankly completely necessary, to investigate whether it's infected animals or might be the result of an accident at a lab in Wuhan. That was on April 30th. At the same moment, hold on, take the screen down for a second so I can find this.
Who do you listen to nowadays? So hard. Just to have good judgment. Yeah, I don't know what's worse, being guilty or being the one that has to determine the sentence. Dr. Judy Mikovits said to forgive yourself and one another. The rest of her message will be lost in everyone's individual effort to protect their own identity, ego, and list of agendas. Conscious or subconscious, everybody got an ulterior motive, just like everybody got a motor in a motor vehicle. Unless you pushing a bicycle, clearly we got some things to address. It really don't matter who's now, more about who's got next. Stress will kill you quicker than an overdose of most of the popular pollutions, the poisons. Everybody needs solution, they forgot. You post to mix it with water. You concentrate on your son and your daughter. Why? Focus on yourself, stupid. They gon' see, monkey do. Look at me, look at you. Rather be lucky than good, but I'll take a combination. Crucial conflict. C to signing sheet. Fuck is that? We need to get right back to the middle and fuck your answers. Let's get a better question. Yeah. I guess that's where the hook would go. What's good, y'all? It's FRESH2020. The vlogcast is all long gone lost, man. From a workflow standpoint, messed around and went back on my own best practices of no post-production. Editing for time, be it at the beginning or the end, is acceptable, but in betwixt and in between, what happens in vagueness stays in vagueness. I'm having such a rough time communicating cogently with the people that I love about the most meaningful event, circumstance, situation, crisis, tragedy, event, a historically significant data point on the blip of recorded history, human history. And I think everyone needs to take a giant step back and think about the foundation on which they're standing and taking for granted and using it to build upon the foundation, a scaffolding, a modality, an operating system, and then with that framework you hang your arguments, your ideas, your positions, unfortunately your identity, unfortunately. This is so ironic. I remember telling a friend that this was years ago, I felt this sense, this little twang of guilt that I was shirking my responsibility as a journalist. And I'm using that term loosely because I majored in it, I studied it, and I practiced it for a few years in my undergraduate tenure, but I never had a professional paying job as a journalist for any publication, major, minor, independent, or otherwise. And since then, I don't know what you consider news. I don't know what you consider entertainment. I don't know what you consider opinion. don't know what you consider fact. I don't know what you consider to be belief. I don't know what you consider to be an idea. I don't know if you're capable of having an idea. I think that ideas are their own entity, and more often than not, the idea has a person, or an idea will express itself through a consciousness, right? So the analogy, illustration, metaphor that had come to me was this notion that the computer as we know it today in 2020, and as I remember it in 1995, shout out to Windows and Microsoft, was basically designed and patterned after the human brain. It was capable of performing calculations and functions and storage, like memory, and as a means of information technology, it was the equivalent of the Industrial Revolution, but on an exponentially grander scale, more or less ushering in the information age, as we are currently calling it, if you're looking to split up our version of this iteration of modern human recorded history. And for me, in my bandwidth, that starts around the 1920s, when you have pictures, motion pictures, what have you. Most people's understanding of a computer, I really love being in my generation that grew up without the internet and with the internet, because our perspective is necessarily compartmentalized between Oregon Trail, C++, C:, black screen, tell me what to do, computer class from the late 80s and early 90s. Fast forward to the cellular telecommunications device in your pocket right now has way more computing power than the space shuttle that allegedly took astronauts off the surface of the Earth, beyond the atmosphere, and to the moon, the space station, etc. And I was playing with the idea, the notion that not only is it lazy and unhelpful to think about the mind, brain, computer in such terms and as an illustration, allegory for one another. Not only is that lazy and not helpful, it's actually harmful, and it's actually confining or constricting our understanding of ourselves and our origin. You might say, Pharaoh, why is that important? So I think most of us have been exposed to the idea of a collective consciousness, collective soul of some type, an idea like that. And usually that conversation would start with, why is it that I can feel somebody looking at me before I can see it? Or how do I experience these coincidences where I'll think about somebody and then they'll call? Or the intuition, the subconscious, the dreaming mind pokes through the surface, if you will, breaks through the consciousness, and if not just for a moment, becomes the unmoved mover, the decision maker, if you will. Trust your gut, go with your gut, follow your heart. And in my opinion, and I've heard Joe Rogan and other creative minds, independent broadcasters, play with the idea that we're more like an antenna. We're more like a transmitter and or receiver of energy, of vibrations, waves. We're more that than a computing, logical, critical thinking, default to deductive reasoning creatures, right? Like, where did we come from? Why are we here? Where are we going? Those questions seem to be at the root of everyone's search for meaning at some point. And the foundation, the scaffolding, the structure, the tower that we look to construct just for our own map of meaning. It could be built on sand. It could be built on quicksand. Like, for me, as one who is blessed with the superpower of critical thinking and have maintained an above average attention span throughout the course of my adult life, I find that the need for better questions far outweighs our need for an easily digestible answer. And I don't mean to discount the value of truth, the nature of truth, the importance of the through line of logic, right? If then, the scientific method, hypothesis, a theory, an experiment, a repeatable experiment, synthesis of results. Like, most of us were given the tools on how to think and how to navigate the world, how to discern fact from fiction with a pretty solid base in science, with history being the data set. What I'm hoping for, with cautious optimism, is a reset of sorts, much like you would reboot a computer. Remember, you would defrag your Windows 95 machine, you'd hit that defrag, like, man, my computer's running slow. I need to... What was that? What did that do? right? You would see the little ticker going across, and the little bricks, they'd be, you know, reorganizing the GUI, right? The graphic user interface would communicate to you, the user, that the computer was organizing its files and disposing of file fragments and optimizing its functionality by increasing its storage, its bandwidth, its capacity to make calculations. So I'm hoping for something like that, but for people. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what that looks like. I want to know what it feels like. I had a funny feeling about Bill Gates last summer, and I expressed that funny feeling to a friend. And it seems either ironic or ominous, fortuitous. At the moment, we'll see. We shall see. I've always had an aspect of technology in virtually all of my creative endeavors, and to what extent I relied on the device to perform the necessary functions. I would almost always experience an anomaly or an irregularity that would lead me to believe that the device was sentient. That the electronic device, the computer, the accoutrement, the cables, the connectors, do you remember the first time that you realized that your iTunes or your Spotify or your streaming service of choice, your library of music digitally stored and curated, when randomized, seemed to know things about you? Do you remember that? I don't know much about artificial intelligence, general artificial intelligence, other than what I've learned from what I consider to be wise and decent thought leaders in the space. But it seems like there was a seedling of an algorithm, and that was my first experience. And we are all androids already, from the mouth and mind of Elon Musk. Don't be confused. Just because there's a very slow upload, download, just because I'm limited by how fast I can move my thumbs, flap my gums. We've all been looking at ourselves through a black mirror for longer than we'd like to admit. And whatever the next stage of that is going to look like, what's scarier? Your electronic device is sentient, or your carbon-based, spiritual, egotistical device is a robot, is a machine? Which one is scarier to you? No good deed goes unpunished, but most bad deeds get rewarded in the form of the poet laureate, the vainglorious, the vanguard of the art that I consume. Maybe a little porous, but so was every piece of fungus. The whole Pacific Northwest could have ignored us, but now they implore us to be vigilantly minded and liberally confined, learning without borders, teaching without prejudice. But that's just my 2 cents. It's just freestyle fresh coming at you on a Saturday with some things that's on my mind, a couple colored bricks, and I'm not standing in line. Straight to the front every time, cause I'm VIP. Shout out to all the mommies, cause tomorrow is Mother's Day. She was my spaceship. I'm an alien, at least a hybrid. I might have forgot my past, well I did, but I will remember that shit, even if it's beyond my normal rate state of consciousness. And I know you got already too much on your plate, so why you kicking and screaming when I ask you to share it with a neighbor that you probably met once or twice, but you don't know if they're naughty or nice? Honor your mother. Keep it real. Keep it a buck. Give somebody the gift of honesty. Today, tomorrow, next week. Peace and love, family. It's FRESH2020. It's the Vlogcast Daily-ish. I love you guys. Remember, give your body the things that it needs to fight the disease.